Well, New Telegraph is where we're starting off from, and it leads with the state of security, something that is being done, or at least a call being made from the reps, as they've summoned service chiefs, Ribadu, Oyedele, others, ask Tinubu to flush out bandits, secure schools, and others, urge Defense Minister to deploy more security to Northwest. IGP deploys DIGs to respective zones, says operatives recovered 957 arms and ammunitions in 1 month. DSS intercepts conversation, uncovers plan to abduct school children in Edo, arrest one suspect. It's spread across, these stories are spread across 4 pages in the New Telegraph today, but I'll just zero in on the update or the account being given by the IGP, saying that operatives recovered 957 arms, ammunition in 1 month. And you just wonder, for a country that you can't carry arms, right? It's not like America where you can get guns and be licensed. Nigeria doesn't have such provisions, so it always just worries me how it is easy to have guns, ammunitions, just like that. Why? How? Clearly there is a leakage, because if it's only security operatives that are allowed to carry arms, how is it getting into the hands of criminals? Where are they collecting license? Are they getting license? Are they getting it the right way? Clearly they're not. So where is this leakage coming from? So as much as it's great to hear about the mop-up, fantastic work being done, how are they getting this guns, this ammunitions? And lest we forget, the case of Mene Ogidi in Delta State. You recall the young man who was killed in the open by a security policeman. Where is that case right now? Who sent the gun that they say he went to pick up? Why was he killed? Who is at the heart of this? Because this is how we then have these ammunitions going around and ending up in the wrong hands. This is a case that must not be buried. ASP Nuhu Usman, who shot Mene Ogidi, you may recall that story in April. This is one of many of the incidents that we then call, arms or illegal arms proliferation. This is what leads to it. So we must not sweep that under the carpet. I understand that the judicial process has begun, but the point is we're not forgetting about this case. That is the front page of the New Telegraph this morning, focusing on insecurity and what is being done. We expect to see the response from the service chiefs, Ribadu, Oyedele, and the rest. But I must say, guys, this is going to be a true test of the powers of the National Assembly. Will the service chiefs appear? Will they answer those questions? We'll wait to see.
And that differs from the position of the Senate, during that hearing when there were calls for a probe of the defense allocation, which was not seconded by any lawmaker on the floor of the Senate. And of course, we heard the Senate leaders speak in reaction to that about 24 hours later, saying it would be unpatriotic to initiate any probe and insensitive, giving, the warlike situation Nigeria in and the work that the armed forces are putting in to defend Nigeria's territorial integrity. That's without quoting him copiously now. And so if this is coming through from the House of Representatives, it'll be interesting to see. It would, in fact, be a test of the legislative independence of perhaps, if you like, this one arm of the National Assembly. And if they're able to go through with it, if this is not political hot air, quoting Jeffrey, if this is not just a one-off, if they would see it through, well, is it unpatriotic to call for a probe of the security allocation, especially amid the fight against insurgency that has seen, very little result against what Nigeria is up against? It will be interesting to know what your answers are to that very important question. But let's get to the next paper this morning. And the Vanguard makes an interesting read this morning. Let's take a look at the Vanguard. Nigeria moving in right direction. That's ascribed to the federal government. unveils Tinubu's scorecard, defense reforms, highlights economic gains, 1 million student loan beneficiaries, tax reforms, anti-graft successes, says it's prepared to be judged by evidence. That's the big story on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Of course, the Minister of Finance also issued a statement in the last couple of hours acknowledging the IMF's report on Nigeria's macroeconomic successes and the gains of the reforms of the administration. But are you seeing the gains of the administration in those critical areas? There have also been reports in the last couple of hours about the increase in price of food, how much Nigerians are spending on food, on petrol and energy costs, and all of that. So are they trickling down to the micro level? Well, the answers are not far-fetched this morning. There are also other stories on the front page of the Vanguard. If you see right beside the nameplate, after rescue of 416 captives in Borno, 11 more kidnapped women regain freedom. Of course, at least there's something to cheer. That's it from the front page of the Vanguard newspaper.
When it comes to the argument as whether the government is performing or not, two things can be true at the same time. There are certain things this government has done that is commendable in the macroeconomic end. In fact, I think it was 2 days ago, I looked at the dashboard of the CBN. You could see that the foreign reserve has gone up. I think it has crossed the $50 billion mark, which is the gross foreign reserve. So that's a good thing because it helps with our import licenses, being able to sort out certain obligations and all of that. And then the issue of currency stability, although the exchange rate is super high by any standard, but it is stable, it is predictable, and that is why we have a lot of the hot money coming in. So if you look at our import, capital inflows, you see that we did about 10 billion or so capital importation, but the FDI is abysmal in that entire range. So I could go on and on in terms of the big dashboards. They've tapered inflation by, I think, about 10% when it was rebased. So those are the, big ones. But the micro is also true. Life is tougher now than before President Tinubu came into power. That is the truth. Because you were buying eggs. I look at the numbers. You're buying eggs. I have what I call the egg standard. You're buying eggs less than 50 naira, about 50 naira before President Tinubu came in, or shortly before he came in. And then now you're buying eggs for 250, 300 naira. You are buying fuel for less than 200 because it was there was subsidy. Now it's about 1,003. So life cannot be easier. Whether the excuse, and I let me just go on what I'm saying. Electricity is more expensive. Now, why is everything expensive? Because of the neoliberal policy of the government in removing subsidy from everywhere there was subsidy, literally from PMS, from part electricity, and managed floating of the currency. So all of this has a knock-on effect on the everyday life transportation. So life is tougher now under President Tinubu than it was because of this policy. And he acknowledges this. So when I see some of his lieutenants come to defend that life is better, and I don't also, it's funny to me how we try to vilify the fact that there is almost like a crime subsidizing anything. There's no crime subsidizing anything. It is whether or not you can sustain that subsidy. So what I would expect government to say most of the time, look, we can choose to subsidize, but this is a consequence of subsidy. We may not be able to afford it. For God's sake, there are so many countries around the world that subsidize a lot of things for their people, and they are still surviving, perhaps because they have the capacity to do so. So let's not demonizing subsidy. I know neoliberal capitalists, even economies are divided on issues around subsidy or not. So life is tougher. So the government has to look for a way, because the government was not prepared for the shocks that the consequential impact of what they did. It was close to the right decision that was made at that time, but the consequential impact is what they've not been able to handle. So two things can be true at the same time. The macroeconomic dashboard looks good, but the pain on the people and their hardship is worse than it was before. So you can choose to debate that.
You know what I found recently, and it was yesterday actually, and I really hope that it's not the case. So I just went to a gas station to buy gas. Apparently, a lot of wholesalers.
Gas.
Gas. Is there?
Not American gas.
Not American.
Okay.
No, we don't use gas in Nigeria. We use petrol. We call it petrol. Or we'll go the extent of gasoline, but it's petrol here. But gas, cooking gas.
Yeah.
LPG.
Thank you very much. That you put in your cylinder, just to be clear. And you know, I was surprised that the price per kilogram was 1,700. Now, other people have been buying it for 2,000 plus, 2,400, so maybe even more than that, 2,600. So I'm really hoping that when the wholesalers who came to buy there go to sell to the end users, it will reflect at least what they bought it for. So max, you sell it for maybe 1,800 or 1,900, depending on how you want to mark up
the margins.
Exactly, the margins, and not 2,500, 2,400. So I'm really hoping that's not what's happening with the gas situation. Yes, it's not what it used to be. We used to buy way less than 1,000 naira before, and even then, a lot of people were still complaining. Talk more of now that is more than 1,000 or more than 2,000. So I'm really hoping. Let us know where you're buying cooking gas from, and how much you're buying cooking gas right now. It's not where it should be, but I'm hoping that we're all fair to each other in terms of doing business.
You know, and amid fairness, Kadi, we just have to reflect another part of the conversation for areas far-flung from centers, central business districts, where, you know, you can buy at the wholesale price. When they get to their communities, it just may be more expensive.
That's why I added 200, 300 per kilogram.
Yeah.
Depending on
That's
what they spend on transportation, it could be way more than that.
Yeah, I understand what you say. You know, the location matters in margin. So, in fact, there was a day, the last time I went to buy gas for the home, I went to, on a day they were not open. I didn't know they were not open, so, but I saw the price. Look, I think they didn't have. I saw the price about 18,000 for 12.5 kg. 18, no, not 18, 16 something. So the next day when they had, I went back, it was 17, almost 18,000, just in 24 hours. That's how things are. And I think we will help to, maybe we'll do a dashboard of what the government is touting as their gains, and also show them the reality of the consequence of that gain as well. Because two things happen. It's either government takes the hit, what they call fiscal pressure, in doing what they have to do, or they take off fiscal pressure and you and I as consumers take the hit. So we must look for a way to find a balance so that government survives, we survive. But right now, government is surviving. That's why the state governors are having a lot of money, even though some of them are doing absolutely nothing with that money. Some are trying, and we are the ones suffering. So it's one way or the other. Let's go to this Nigeria. Reps to service chiefs and insecurity or resign. IGP orders nationwide crackdown on unregistered vehicles. Some of these things, we've heard it over and over and over. It's like a broken record. But we understand there's going to be a hearing where all of the gentlemen in our military, who we applaud and commend them for what they are doing so far, but they can do more if they have all the support they need. I will just leave it at that. But I think it's time for these kinds of, you know, decisions to come through where we're clear that, okay, if you cannot do the job, excuse yourself from the job, because right now we need results. We can't continue to cope because it's about life and death. And just besides the nameplates, we have INEC recognizes Abdurrahman Ayanwu as PDP NWC leaders on the portal. So that there was a case that went, I think just Gumon's case, the Ibadan High Court that went to appeal courts. And it was more looked like, I think, an academic exercise. But both of them are arguing as to the interpretation of the appellate court. The appellate court actually held to the fact that, let's say, accepting without conceding that your arguments that you brought to this appeal court is true. But whatever we want to do here has already been decided by the Supreme Court. And I don't want to go to the technicalities, a bit technical, but by and large, both sides are claiming victory, but INEC has recognized Abdurrahman. That is the Wike-backed PDP. What's the fate of the PDP? We're going to look at it maybe later on, subsequently on one of our shows. But for now, guys, I'm just tired of this juvenile politics in 2026. where almost after 30 years, political parties are still fighting over who leads them. I think it's just childish to me. We should outgrow this. After this election, let's outgrow this absolute nonsense with the greatest respect. But we'll take a break now. When we come back, we will be looking at the first conversation. You know, you heard about the derailment of the train and the people that lost their lives. The managing director is going to be joining us in just a moment. Stay with us.